coding a part of the mandatory curriculum. So without further ado, let's invite Prime Minister to the podium. Here.
May I start? As of this year, England will become the first country to mandate computer programming in primary and secondary schools. Children will start learning to write code from the age of 5 until at least 16 when they finish their GCSEs. Some US schools are also integrating coding into the curriculum by their choice, says Beaver County Day. So school is making computer science a mandatory requirement for high school graduation. The school has integrated computer science education into its geometry class, followed by arts and music. So before we move on, we would like to clarify that what coding is. Coding is just one part of broader subject of computer programming. Computer programming is a process that leads from an original formulation of a computing problem to executable problems, meaning taking an initial idea and developing it into a functioning software program or website. Coding refers to being able to work in the language of computers. Secondly, taking mandatory part of the curriculum. This means that every student within a primary or secondary school will have to learn it and pass it in order to graduate. It will likely become an integral part of the broader IT curriculum that most schools already teach. And so, in Britain and the United States, coding and the IT industry in general have erupted, with so many jobs and not enough people to fill them. In the US, tech startups are core to 5 out of 10 of the fastest growing industries. Moreover, the computer systems design and related services industry is one of the American sectors with the most rapidly increasing wage and salary employment, according to a December 2013 Bureau of Labor Statistic report. Many argue that in light of this, it is critical that governments prepare students appropriately. Therefore, it is important for the government to prepare a curriculum. Since Korea is one of the countries that have developed IT skills, for example, we have one of the fastest internet connection, we have one of the highest internet availability rates. We should continue to specialize in the field and of IT as it is great strength to our nation. Korea needs to realize that information technology is a uniquely important part of our country, and we need to educate our further generations to make sure that the IT industry remains firm. So today, the government side is bringing up a policy. Firstly, mandate coding in schools according to an education laws, for example, British laws. Secondly, for significantly developed and qualified coding programs, teachers and government should fund the schools to incentivize developing coding as a mandatory curriculum. And thirdly, Ministry of Education sending people to check if the schools are running coding as a mandatory curriculum, and we believe that there should be an annual investment if the schools are considering coding as a mandatory curriculum and if the curriculum is working out well. Fourthly, for students who do not have computers at home, schools should provide a time where students can use public school computers for practice and possible homeworks. Today we have 3 arguments. Firstly, why coding? Secondly, why mandatory curriculum? And thirdly, teaching coding at a young age will encourage creativity and innovation in the information technology arena. So firstly, we move on to my first argument, why coding? Firstly, society changed into a computer-based society. Like how students need to know the basics of science and math, the era requires coding, computer science. Students should be taught coding for programming and basic computer functions to actually adapt to the society. Secondly, information technology is the way of the future, and almost all jobs now require a reasonable level of computer literacy. For one, being capable of maintaining a website, debugging and securing your computer and fixing company software when it fails is an advantage employment. More importantly, the coding and IT industry is growing at an exponential rate, with the number of jobs available for individuals with coding skills growing every year. Example, so Silicon Valley in the United States is undergoing such rapid growth that there are not enough programmers to keep up with it, which has led to several talent droughts. As a result, they will be capable of easily finding lucrative employment either here in Korea or abroad. In the alternative, Korean students may begin to outcompete in the job market by students from countries where coding is mandatory part of the curriculum, like United Kingdom. And secondly, why mandatory curriculum? There could be students who cannot afford for learning coding. They might not have computers or afford for extracurriculum activities or academies. We believe that schools will be the greatest chance for them to be given the opportunity to learn higher qualified educations and the chance to adapt and be successful to the future society. Yes?
Oh.
Oh. So today we have proved to you why coding is such an important part of our society and how this will improve. And secondly, why these should be considered as a mandatory curriculum and be taught in the schools. Thank you.
Speakers spoke for 6 minutes. And let's open the case of opposition by calling the leader of the opposition to the podium. Here.
May I start? Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, what is the problem with the status quo? If learning coding is necessary, we don't need all those companies who have actually is programming the programs for the individuals. Since there is already a programming company that individuals can freely use, we certainly believe that the coding education should not be mandated. We understand how the government thinks globally and want the country to be globalized. However, but what we believe is that they are not realizing the real situations of the Korean people. Do you realize how Korean students will first reply another academy for coding? Korea currently ranking as the first as a teen suicide. There's a reason for that, ladies and gentlemen. They are suffering of these education, ladies and gentlemen. We know how the government thinks globalization is so important. However, what we believe is how the students in the Korea in the status quo is something the government should think first. So before moving on, I would like to rebut to the previous speaker, the Prime Minister. Chef talked about how now, in the current status quo, jobs require certain knowledge upon the computers. However, what we believe is that already in the current education, the status quo, there is this classes that talks about the computers and the basic knowledge about these computers. Yes, ma'am.
We want all these students who can't afford this to actually try out education and know how to do coding, and we want all these students to learn only mandatory curriculums.
I think he did not understand my argument. What I'm talking about is that coding is not something should be necessary. In the current status quo, in these Korean public education systems, there is a required class which teaches the students about these computers, ladies and gentlemen. So what we're saying is already in the status quo, there is this computer teaching programs which teaches the basic things about the computer. But why also teach coding, which requires them stress, ladies and gentlemen? I will move on to my next point, which first I will talk about necessity. Second, I will talk about the inefficiency, and the last but not least point, I will talk about the side effects due to this policy. So first of all, ladies and gentlemen, what the opposition team believes is this policy is absolutely not necessary, ladies and gentlemen. We believe that there is no reason for all students to suddenly learn coding. Firstly, there are people who are interested in programming, but there are people who are not, ladies and gentlemen. Not all people like coding. Some do not even care about those coding skills in the first place. We believe that the government team today, government team is forcing these students to participate in coding classes, ladies and gentlemen. Only ones who have the will should be the ones who participate. Do you really have to teach people who don't even care? We mean we can teach coding like an after-school program, ladies and gentlemen. There is a reason for this after-school programs, to actually teach the ones who are interested in certain fields. Some schools had started these after-school coding classes, and it seems very, very successful, and it was very effective because only the ones who have the will and interest to learn these kind of coding participate, ladies and gentlemen. Teach ones who want. Why put that in a mandatory situation, ladies and gentlemen? We believe that there is absolute no reason to put this mandatory. Yes, we understand that now is a digital era where we live with software technology, but we would like to ask, do we really need to learn and how to make program softwares? It's just fine for us to know the proper use of the software, not to make them. For example, there is a lot of course around us. We just have to know how to drive it, but not to make it, ladies and gentlemen. This is still fine. Or think about those smartphones. There's a lot of people using it. We have to know how to use it, but we don't have to know how to make it, ladies and gentlemen. We have to know how to use the programs, but we don't need to know how to make it, ladies and gentlemen. The second of all, I'll talk about how this policy is very, very inefficient and it's lacking infrastructure. Think about the status quo. Right now, the learning environment in Korean is based on tests, or exactly Korean Scholastic Ability Test, a test that decides which university you can go. Because the name value of university is very important in the Korean society, where the students have to actually get good grades in these tests. But in considering the status quo, do you think this policy will actually help these students? Only putting on one more subject is only putting on the students to actually go to this private education to learn more subjects, ladies and gentlemen. The Korean government has not decided whether they should include this in the KSAT or not, but there's a problem. So first, if they include in this situation, it is obvious that coding will be just as same as any other subjects like math and language arts, which is a very, very passive subject, ladies and gentlemen. They will have to go to these private education programs, and at these educations, it's out of order, education to actually learn these problems, which means it's only victimization of these Korean students, ladies and gentlemen. It's only in current status quo, the only way to know how these students have understand this subject or not, since there's no actual alternative, that's why we have those written tests, ladies and gentlemen. And same as coding. So coding will be also tested by writing. It's not actually learning the coding, but learning the words, learning the terms, and how to do like the steps. It's not actually learning the coding, but only memorization. It's only one of the passive subjects, ladies and gentlemen. We understand the coding might be important, but how is this going to be tested? They have not gave us a new kind of alternative, ladies and gentlemen. And to add on, in the current status quo, we lack coders, so the big companies are outsourcing these coders from out of seas. And however, if there aren't enough coders to actually work in the companies, or will there be enough coders and teachers to actually teach these schools? We believe not. If there's not even enough coders to even work, but is there enough coders to teach all those students in Korean society, since there are a lot of students? So we also believe, so that's why we believe it's not going to be working at the first place. I believe the government team is trying to think about the globalization, but what we believe is to know the reality and think about the students at the first place. That's why I'm part to propose. Thank you.
The speaker spoke for 6 minutes and 18 seconds. Then let's invite the PM to the podium to proceed his speech. Here.
Ladies and gentlemen, we believe that side opposition is totally misunderstanding what our policy is actually stating. Our policy is saying that we're going to give out correct curriculum, which means that they don't need to go to academies, which they have been just saying for the last 6 minutes and 30 seconds. Also, she has been mentioning about that we're going to have lack of computers and there's going to be lack of people who are actually teaching. Well, first of all, we would like to mention that art, math, and all those other kind of subjects actually had this kind of situation when they first started, and we believe that the situation later on became better as we learn the status quo. Also, she has been mentioning about that we're going to have these side effects by having that we're going to have these tests, and the people are only going to have the focus towards the test. And we believe that side opposition is just having a discrimination towards these kind of so-called subjects. They're just saying that we're going to have tests, and they're telling us that if we actually have one more subject to learn, they're saying that we should go to academies. And we believe that since we're going to have a correct curriculum, which is starting from the basic of the elementary schools, we believe that the society is going to offer the students to actually have good education. Also, not only that, they have been mentioning about that we're going to well, these people are actually going to hate, and we should only allow these people who are willing to take. And she also mentioned about the program that people can actually learn. First of all, we would like to say, how about those people who don't have enough money to actually offer for those programs? Second of all, we would like to answer that these kind of experts in these kinds of places are actually telling and requesting the society to change this kind of status quo by teaching the coding to become mandatory. So we believe that is the reason why our policy is going to actually work very good in the status quo, and we believe that's why the opposite side is going to fail in their policy. And our team's last argument is about that we should teach coding in a very early age. First of all, people, when you're young, you're actually having a lot of creativity, and you have a lot of knowledge, and you have a lot of intelligence. And that's why people are saying that when you become old, your brain becomes to not think about the creativity. And we believe that that's the reason why we have to have coding mandatory in elementary schools. Yes?
Don't you think that there are other ways other than coding to increase the creativity of the students?
Well, we believe that we're not saying that we're going to have coding to increase their creativity. We're saying that because they have creativity, we have to teach them when they're in elementary school. And that's the reason why we have to have coding mandatory. And that's the reason why, because the government side is saying that we're going to have a step by teaching them coding as a very professional. We believe that that's the reason why we have to start them from the elementary school. And we also believe that according to the UK coding program, Michael Gove, the country secretary of state for education, has been saying that there was no alternative to making this work if you didn't want Google's and Microsoft of tomorrow to be created elsewhere. And exactly, people, we believe that that's the reason why we should have coding mandatory. Well, everyone is saying that the 21st century and the 22nd century is going to become the international century, and it's going to have a lot of people actually sharing their ideas of some things, and we believe that the basic start of dividing these ideas and sharing these ideas is the internet, and we believe that coding is the basic of internet, and we believe that that's the reason why we should allow coding as mandatory. Also, not only that, we believe that there are a lot of people in this place actually have laptops, and we also believe that many people are beginning to have interest towards these kind of places, and so that's the reason why we believe that this is the right stance. This is the right term that we should allow coding mandatory, because coding is something that people can't offer because it's so professional that they have to learn it from. Also, even though coding isn't going to actually affect your life very well, we believe that as home economics, it's going to be a basic knowledge to you, which we believe that is very important in your life. And also, not only that, because coding is something that is going to change our society, such as the Google or Apple, we believe that coding should be mandatory in our state. So in conclusion, as the side of government, we believe that since coding is something that many people are actually realizing, and as our wonderful PM has been just mentioning why coding is mandatory, we believe that coding should be something that many people are actually learning, and coding is something that many people should actually have the curriculum, not go to academies, which the opposition side has been saying. I'm very proud to propose.
The speaker spoke for 4 minutes and 36 seconds. Then let's proceed with the yellow speech. Here.
Am I sorry? Before proceeding, I would like to argue some of the lagging arguments which the government team had made. The government team keeps saying that all citizens should learn coding as a mandatory subject. However, even though people do not learn coding, people are living so well in this current status quo. In school, we learn science and math, which are the basics of coding. And when we advance it, it can be the advancement of coding, but why do we have to add the coding, which will only burden the students? Also in Korea, the people who are working in the computer engineering subjects are considered as the 3D jobs, and people do not want are not willing to do that jobs, and we should not forget that the school is the place where teaches the basic subjects, and coding is an expertise technology. It doesn't depend people's lives, ladies and gentlemen. If we cannot do the math, we cannot buy the products in the market, and if we can't speak Korean, we can communicate with other problems. And the coding and we have to learn in schools, which is a subject which can depend their lives, and this also means that we don't have to put coding as a mandatory subject. And the government team had also mentioned about how coding can contribute to our society. However, the leader of opposition, the deputy leader of opposition, we believe that the government team is not considering about the future potential hackers. There are people who can make the right choices, and there are people who make the wrong choices, and that's why the criminals are existing in this current society. So what if the students who cannot make the right choices abuses their studies of coding, which they have learned from the schools? We're only developing the future potential hackers in this society, ladies and gentlemen. And now, And moving on to my arguments, I would like to introduce the side effects of implementing this policy. This policy will only bring many side effects. It will increase the private education market. At the status quo, ladies and gentlemen, the reason why many students go to academies and learn subjects for hours and hours is because the subject they are learning in school affairs is the GPA, which affects their high schools. I mean, the current majority of the students go to academies that helps you memorize well and get good scores in subjects like PE or ethics, And that is because if the students get a good score, a good GPA, they have a higher chance and higher opportunity of going good high schools. So the point is, if coding becomes an also mandatory education, then there is a very high chance that the students who have difficult time understanding coding or have memorizing a specialized computer words that appear in the textbook, they will definitely go to the academies or get the private tutor that can help people to get a good score, Also, since parents who want their children to get a good score in coding will definitely look for famous academies that specialize in coding for star lecturers that have major in computers. Such demands will only stimulate the private education market to create academies that specialize in coding and star lecturers that have majored in computer programming. In fact, the status quo, there is already a rumor if so students from MIT open an academy for coding, then they would make a profit using their knowledge. So these academies and lectures for coding will only increase the private education market and increasing the competition among the academies and giving a wider option for parents to choose better academies and better lecturers. And this phenomenon, ladies and gentlemen, the single addition of the subject would heavily worsen the never-ending vicious cycle of the private education market. It would only make the parents to find the academies that can help their child to get a good grade, which stimulates and the private education market to produce these academies and create the competition. So clearly, ladies and gentlemen, this policy will only make the students have to once more go through this vicious cycle where they're forced to rely on private education, and this policy will only aggravate the current situation and only advise the desperate need of private education markets. Moreover, ladies and gentlemen, this policy will victimize the students. Now, why is that? The reason is because policies related to education that the Ministry of Education have that have all been unsuccessful. The government at first have an intent to bring change in students' education, but when they figure out that it costs a lot of money or it is unpractical, they just shut down the program and create a better program but shut it again. In fact, ladies and gentlemen, this contradictory cycle of opening and banning programs have been a habit of the government for the past few decades. For example, the government has kept on confusing many students for policy, such as the abolishment of Munka and Ikwa in Seoul University, which brought in chaos among many students who were planning to apply for the Seoul University. So the point is that if we analyze how the government has doing until now, only thing that we can conclude in the end, the government clearly considers education policy lightly. It clearly does not understand their
continuously changing policy have been victimizing the students, and these young students are becoming the scapegoats of the contradictory actions the adults are taking. These students are forced to study and the way the educational policy are implemented, but as soon as the policies are erased, the time and money and the effort of learning becomes wasted, and they have to change their strategies again and again. Looking at the actions that the government has taken until now, the government may shut down this program because maybe there aren't enough students who are interested in coding, or because it's too expensive, or maybe there aren't enough professional teachers who are capable of teaching. There will be victimized students who have gone to academies and received private education to learn coding, but end up wasting money and time again. So ladies and gentlemen, as the opposition, what we would like to ask the government is to simply stop making policy which is a success is not guaranteed. And we would like to demand the government to stop making the situation worse for the students, when they are already burdened. Thank you.
Speakers spoke for 6 minutes and 35 seconds. Let's wrap up the debate by calling government whip. Here.
I start? Mr. and Madam Speaker, we clearly see that coding is a necessary point today. As also the opposition agrees, coding is key to the future. Even though they've tackled us in the point where it shouldn't be mandatorized and why it's not going to be beneficial, let's disprove that today following my clashes. 2 clashes about why we need coding and what benefits would each team bring. Before we go on to our clashes, let me just go over a few points that our previous speaker just brought up today in this debate. So first of all, they talked about why there's 3D jobs and why Korean people actually dislike these jobs. Mr. and Madam Speaker, CS is the most, IT communities are the most developed and most incentivizing community right now. It's practically the best place you can ever work here because everyone is focusing on what they can develop our society through and how we're going to change throughout the society. And that's why we believe this incentivizing job should be open to any people, every person, because some people can't even afford it or some people can't receive it just because of the reason that they don't have enough money. Okay, so let's go over to our 2 clashes. First clash about why we need coding. Necessity. It was our first argument. Okay, before we go on our clash, let's look at your argument. Yes.
So are you saying that after those education in public schools, we can actually work in those CS companies?
We believe that it's a selection of the student to work in a CS company and an IT company. But what we believe is that it is necessary for us to learn coding. Today our opponents don't understand our definition or the main definition of coding. Coding is computer language, digital literacy. We believe that all people have to learn how to control the computer in its least important state, and the people who want these jobs actually get a better off stance to get these jobs, because we know that people who learn quickly get to learn more and get to do more and get a lot of jobs after this education. Okay, continuing on, we've gained a few points why it's needed. Because, first of all, it's going to be the key of the future. Coding, what we're going to teach, isn't very significant because it's not the highest level of coding education because we're teaching it to students that aren't really high level. But what we want to talk about today is that we want to be where we know that these computer science technologies are going to be the future's math and reading, listening, literature, and all these things are actually perceptions of professionals. We believe that these companies and these people actually know computer science is effective, and coding, which is the basis, the most basic part of this level, every student has to know to actually defend themselves or even further on become and get a job in the future society to get an IT job. Okay, later on, we continue talking about jobs. Silicon Valley, they have too much jobs that people can't even fulfill. There's billions of companies that are made every day related to IT jobs, and we believe that if we have all our students who are related to and who are interested in this topic can actually become the people who work here, we are not going to only get a few benefits, but a lot of them. Yes.
So according to the logic, for the students to actually go through the policy, that teachers have to be proper teaching.
Well, let's talk about later on because that's not related to our clash anyways. But we are going to talk about that in our second benefit class. But before we go on that, let me talk about that a little more. So first of all, if it's so hard for the students, let's talk about Code Club. Code Club is what primary students of the UK learn. They teach coding so simplified and so well learned, these primary students understand coding perfectly. And that's why, for their first point, coding is not that hard as you imagine, because coding is the basic language. You're learning a simple language of computers. Second of all, there's so many ways we can teach it easily. But third of all, when we talk about teachers, we think that there's so many people, especially in South Korea, who are related and who are good at IT technology. And we believe that these people, not only they can teach, but we believe, second of all, that all subjects that we teach actually had problems when they were first implemented, because no problem is, we can't believe that something's not going to be flawed when we're implementing a new policy. We believe that this flaws will happen, but we know that this would be more beneficial than the major flaws that they're going to bring to us. So continue about coding. They talk about why like people don't actually know. So why we want to talk about it's not necessary. They talk about why they're not going to need it. They're not going to need it. We didn't find any reasoning in what they were talking about, but basically let's try to interpret what they were talking about. Because we believe that it's a basic knowledge. Even though you're not going to work here, these students have to know how to make a website, how to construct your own computer, how to secure yourself from the problems of hackers that they have mentioned. We think that these students should know how to maintain and use a computer in the future society, because computers will be important in the future. And second of all, they talk about why companies outsource students. What we want to point out is that there's too much companies who can't have students enough. We believe that more students should fulfill out the roles the companies need, so that this technology will develop and this technology will succeed. Okay, talk about the second class about benefits. We gave two benefits mainly. First of all, why jobs are needed, and second of all, why students, not only even they're going to have jobs, they need to know how to code, because coding is the main source of how you control a computer, and computers are going to be our future, because computers are developing right now too. Well, they also talk about why like children have to go to academies and why that's too hard for them and it's a hard subject. But we want to talk about code clubs again. Code clubs, primary students learn this. Do you really think that our students in South Korea, who are very talented, will not understand how coding works? It's a simple thing. Second of all, talking about teachers, they talked about why some teachers, we don't have enough teachers. But first of all, we believe that every subject was first implemented, they went through these problems. This has to have problems. But second of all, we believe that this problem will be solved very quickly, because we have a lot of technicians, a lot of people who are talented in this subject. They know how to do this, because especially in South Korea, we are very talented, and we know that not only our students, our teachers, and every society, every part of our community has the responsibility and the talent to learn why coding works, how coding works, and how we will use it. So today we proved why we win both of these classes, why we need it. Well, this wasn't engaged that much from the opposition, but we believe that we've clearly proved why we need coding, because not only you're going to get a job, you need to learn about it in the future, because it's important. It's about reading and it's about littering. And second of all, there's too much benefits in this policy, and we believe that we should learn this even though we're not going to have this. In conclusion, we won the debate. We're going to take it home.
Thank you, Government Whip. You have spoke for 6 minutes and 35 seconds. So let's call Opposition Whip to rep his case. Here.
May I begin? Thank you, honorable adjudicators, ladies and gentlemen, and fellow debaters. This is the Opposition Whip, and this House would not make coding a mandatory curriculum. What the government team is stating today, that they will promote a policy that has only good effects. However, as the opposition proved, they conceive more harms than they are good effects, and which will only give more burdens to the situation, and these burdens that they only come to the students' shoulders. Now, I would like to go on to the to three clashes, which is first of all, why is there a need of this policy at the first place? Second of all, the education and the burden. And lastly, the effectivity of the policy that the government is stating. And before going on, I would like to clarify what the opposition have stated today. We have stated that first of all, there's no necessity to these coding educations at the first place. Second of all, it is highly inefficient. And lastly, there are many side effects conceiving within the policy. And the policy that they'll implement, they'll have side effects that will come out as a major problem later on. Now, I would like to go on to the first clash, which is the need of this policy. What they're stating right now is that to get those computer geniuses, to get those people to learn computer, what they need is coding. However, ladies and gentlemen, these public schools, they already have computer classes at the first place. No, thank you. They have these computer classes at the first place, and in which what the problem is that even though while we can get how to learn how to use computers right now, why should we learn coding at the first place, ladies and gentlemen, right now? No, thank you. Why should we learn how to control these computers by C++ or Boolean at the first place, while we are already at the high level of those people who can control these computers very effectively? Second of all, and also about the fact that they have to mandatoриze coding. However, they are not regarding the rights of those who think that codings are not important. What they're doing right now is to force coding to those who don't want to learn coding. But however, who would like to go to art, or those who want to go to those who want to go to music? Why should they learn coding at the first place, ladies and gentlemen? And also about this, what we have given as a solution is there are after-school programs already. There are already after-school programs that support this, and in which those who are really willing to learn coding, they can go to these after-school programs and learn by their own will, which would be more productive than just getting all the students to learn coding. And to the second clash, which is the education and the burden of this. We all know that to go to good schools, to go to good universities, we go to hagwons. And we go to hagwons regardless of their subjects. And in which, if coding comes into a mandatory education, it is clear that these codings will also be taught in these private education sectors. No, thank you. And just as the leader of opposition have stated, what happens right now is that we need to just go to more academy to learn coding right now. No, thank you. Coding right now, and in which is also highly what is the problem is that the government was keep stating that they will solve these problems within the public education era, but they have failed to do so until now, and in which it is also, for us, it is not really believable that how will they replace these private educations, and in which this is a burden that will come up since it is graded at the first place. As they stated, they are grading this, and if we grade this, that will also go as a burden to these students, because these students will have to learn that to go to university, ladies and gentlemen, and there's one more subject to learn for this, and it will only add academic pressures to the shoulders of our students. So before going on any POIs, seeing none, I would like to go on to the third and the last clash, which is the matter of effectivity. What they said is that this policies is so effective, they can get more workers, they can get people they will get computer geniuses. However, what we believe is that they are confusing work and school and the education that will come right now, ladies and gentlemen. What they're saying is that these codings are not really hard to do, and they can learn it really easily. However, it isn't in the reality. Look at these programmers. What they need to learn is not just dragging blocks like Scratch, but what they need to learn is to learn C++, like Java, or many other different programming languages. They are languages, ladies and gentlemen. I know, like in this floor, we can see that there are many people who have learned English, and what we believe is that to learn English, what we have done is really hard work to learn English and really actually to debate in this round. And however, what they're saying is that to use this, there should be simple methods to learn coding, and what they're saying right now is that to debate with English, there should be only simple learnings. That is what the government is trying to say, which we believe it is not, and that cannot be justified at the first place, ladies and gentlemen. And in today's debate, the opposition team have proved that there is, first of all, no necessity of this problem at the first place. And second of all, it is highly inefficient, as we have given examples such as these advanced languages that these programmers who will work in these eras will have to learn, and the irony that they have given at the first place, that these learning languages are easier. And lastly, the side effects that can come by the implementation of this policy. And that is why today the opposition has taken this debate home. Thank you very much.
Thank you, speaker. You spoke for 6 minutes and 21 seconds. So let's close the case by calling the reply speaker, starting from the opposition reply. Here.
So, at the end of the day, what is the government team trying to propose? Yes, they are looking at the world and calling for globalization. However, what they are doing today is just because for the reason of looking at the world. They are not looking at their own people, the young generations, ladies and gentlemen. In the status quo where students are really already very much suffering from all those subjects, do we need this new coding, ladies and gentlemen? We believe not. So first of all, we believe that the opposition have apparently and successfully brought the debate home for very clear reasons. First of all, they have stated how the students will be benefiting from the jobs and the students learn coding. However, the ones usually benefit from the wages when one is doing something better or more than the others. However, ladies and gentlemen, if everybody learn coding, it will be something that will be a requirement, not something that will be beneficial. And second of all, they have failed to answer the question where the teachers will come from, ladies and gentlemen. When in the situation where the coders and the companies are lacking, so the companies are outsourcing these coders from outseas, do we have enough teachers to teach all these kids, ladies and gentlemen? We believe not. If the students are going to learn coding, they have to learn coding properly with proper teachers. But if you don't have these coders to teach the students, is this coding education will work in the first place? We don't think so. And third, they have never explained about why our alternative and the status quo won't work. If only with the ones who are willing to learn in the after-school programs, and only with the ones who have the interest in these subjects, won't the class will be more productive, more passionate, and more fun. Lastly, they haven't fully clarified how this coding system will be put into education and how it will be taught. Usually nowadays, and they have talked about how this is going to be a new language, but new language, they have not talked about how this is actually learning coding. New language actually leads to new vocabularies, terms, and the new language itself, and coding, including all those alphabets that actually creates these terms. What we believe is only going to end up with the memorization of these terms, but how is these memorizations going to end up actually knowing how to create these problems, ladies and gentlemen? So today, at the end of the debate, what we believe is that the opposition, what they are doing is only thinking about the globalization, however, not actually giving us how to teach the students and how is this going to work, and have failed to actually go against our points, ladies and gentlemen. So I want to ask the judges, I want to ask the Mr. and Madams, the adjudicator, do you want your grandsons, your sons and daughters, your nephews to actually suffer from these kind of new subjects, coding, and go to private education and having not enough sleep? Ladies and gentlemen, I believe not. And I believe that you will take the right pick. Thank you.
Thank you, speaker. You have spoke for 2 minutes and 53 seconds. So let's close debate by calling the last speaker, government reply.
Ladies and gentlemen, well, the opposition reply just gave a question. Then our side would like to give out a question. Do you want your grandsons, granddaughters to suffer in a place where there's no future, there's no bright future? We believe that the 21st century and the 22nd century is going to be based on the international things, such as the coding, such as the internet, and we believe that coding is the basic thing. And we would like to ask the opposition side to please listen to our policy, listen to our whip speech, what they have been stating, and please rebut to what they have listened. First of all, they have given us rebuttals that we're going to have lack of teachers. First of all, we have been responding this for the last 18 minutes, I believe, and they're never listening about how we're going to get it. First of all, our perfect PM has been just coming out and told us that we're actually having lack of teachers, but that is just an original situation that's going to happen, people. And that's the reason when we actually have coding mandatory, we believe that that problem is going to get solved because there's going to be more people who are actually going to teach. Well, first of all, we would like to just organize this debate into 3 words: premise, practicality, and principle. First, for the premise. Well, we believe that the opposition side was full of fundamental assumptions. They were just telling their policy that these people, they were just having discrimination, just saying that these people are going to go to academies. What kind of logic is that? We never said that like even in our policy, we told you that we're going to have a correct circumstance by allowing the students to learn the basics of this stuff. Also, as the opposition with participants keep on questioning, what we have these computer classes, but why are you having coding classes? We believe that computer and coding is different. People, if you have come to elementary schools, if you listen to the computer classes that you have, what you'll learn is Excel PPT, not about coding. And we believe that this is certainly different, and that's the reason why we should learn coding mandatory. Also, for the fundamental contradiction that they have been giving, they have been telling us that there's no necessity of learning these. First of all, they are actually agreeing that the future is going to be based on the internet, based on the computers, and they're saying that it's no necessity. And our side, the proposition, can't actually get the state of the opposition side because they're just saying that it's no necessity, but you know what? The future is going to be related with coding. Yeah, that's a very good stance that they have been giving on. Second, for the principle, their value was saying that these students have burdens. First of all, we believe that yes, these students actually need to take more classes compared to the past. But first of all, people, the reason that we're trying to have coding mandatory is because of the future of this country, and we believe that students are the future of our country. And they're saying that we're trying to make our country to become much more better, and they're saying that because it's a burden, we're not going to allow it. And we believe that that is going to be a very bright future of our country. Now, for the practicality, we believe that coding is something that is going to make we believe that coding is something that many experts are actually requiring towards the government. So we believe that rather than it's just having no necessity, we believe that since many experts are actually allowing the government and requesting the government, we believe that our side's policy has much more practicality compared to the other side. So in conclusion, we believe that since we have won them with all these 3 points, we win this debate. Thank you.
Speakers spoke for 3 minutes and 34 seconds. Debate is over. Thank you, speakers. You may stand up, cross floor, shake hands. Thank you for participating in this debate.